as it gets more competitive, which it will, we will continue to succeed because we're building deep relationships rather than just kind of casting a wide net at our potential leads.
Welcome to the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Axel Ragnarsson, and on this show, I dissect how seasoned multifamily investors started, built, and scaled their businesses. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. Joining me this week is Justin Wawrzyniak, who is a young guy. He's a multifamily investor, lives in Orlando, Florida, invests in various markets throughout the country, but specifically in Indianapolis and up in Michigan, where he lived for a couple of years. And in this episode, we talk about his journey into real estate, how he's been able to find small to mid-sized multifamily deals, really 6 to kind of 30 unit deals by going direct to seller. And we have a lot of overlap in our businesses, I should say, as a result of that strategy, right? In our business, we do a lot of direct to seller. We do a lot of cold calling, cold emailing, direct mail, some texting. And Justin does a lot of the same. And we talk about how new investors or folks that are newer to multifamily direct to seller marketing and prospecting can actually start doing it, some actual steps that they can take to start doing that kind of marketing. We also talk about a handful of Justin's early deals, and we get down, real specifically to how he found them, like what was the actual strategy he used to find them, the tactics he used to find them. We talk about how he structured those deals with some of the partners that he had on those deals. Talk about the software he uses and a lot of the tools that he leverages to make his business a little bit easier to run. And this show is really about direct to seller marketing and prospecting and actually finding off-market, small to mid-sized multifamily deals. So this is a great episode for anyone out there that's looking to do that in their business, looking to figure out how they can start finding some deals off-market, start building a pipeline of off-market deals. And on the same note, because I have to plug it, as you know, we have an online course called Off-Market Multifamily Deals that is available to everybody who's listening to this podcast. If you go to multifamilywealtheducation.com/off-market, you can learn more about it. And our whole entire mission with this course is to show multifamily investors how to build a robust pipeline of off-market deals. And as of July 1st, and obviously this episode will have been out way after that, 5% of the gross sales, not net income, but gross sales, is donated to Aligned Giving, which is a charitable cause that helps support organizations working to combat the homelessness crisis. So support a good cause, learn how to find off-market deals. Go check it out if you haven't already. It's the best content that there is out there to find off-market multifamily deals, or to learn how to build a pipeline, I should say, of off-market multifamily deals. But let's get to this week's episode with Justin Wawrzyniak. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. Joining me is someone who I've known for a couple of years now. We've been in some groups together. We've met in person a few times at various different conferences throughout the years. Another younger guy who's in multifamily real estate. And there's a lot of overlap in that he's doing a lot of direct to seller work to find multifamily deals as well. So we have that in common. But joining me this week is Justin Wawrzyniak. How are we doing, Justin?
I'm doing great. Always a pleasure to talk with you, my man.
Absolutely, man. So why don't we start with your story? I got a sense of it. I kind of know some high level on your backstory, but why don't you share with the listeners, I guess, what you were doing before real estate, how you found real estate, and what your business looks like now?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because obviously you've met me post engineering, right? So I used to be an engineer, and we met in the networking cycles through different groups and stuff like you had mentioned. But even if you go back before engineering, a lot of people don't know this, but I had been arrested twice before the age of 18, right? And so my second one happened, I guess it was right when I turned 18. And I'm looking at it man, I am such a disappointment to my family. What the heck am I doing? But you're so young and dumb, you don't really understand just that there's so much more of life after that. And, if you hang out with the wrong people, bad stuff happens, right? But what happened was, it was super awesome because it gave me that learning lesson of you are the sum of your 5 closest people, right? It was I obviously learned it a lot harder lesson than if maybe somebody would have just told me that. That would have been nice. But I realized if I changed my environment, I was able to turn around and then become a really, really good engineer. So I walked across the graduation stage 4 years later as a top engineer in my class. Now, fast forward, I ended up not staying in engineering very long for the simple reason of I started getting surrounded with high performing people that weren't just engineers. They were business, they were real estate investors, and they kind of got the gears working towards this concept of financial freedom. And I looked at, hey, what's the time commitment to get financial freedom through my W-2 engineering job versus, hey, it's almost like cut our losses now, because you mentioned we're young, in my 20s, I was 25 at the time. What happens if I make the switch now, right? Pre-kids, family or anything like that. The bills haven't stacked up yet, right? Let's see what happens. And that's what I did. So then I kind of changed gears and I went all in on real estate investing. It was a difficult transition, but it's really paid off because we've been able to streamline this kind of path towards financial independence, financial freedom, and ultimately trying to pull that retirement age as soon as possible so we can have a little bit more control over our time. So that's what I did. And then I realized hey, I'm in my 20s. I got no real estate experience. And the banks, they're like, you don't have a job, man. Who the heck are you? Right. So this is where almost out of necessity, we've kind of built our business to where it is now, right? We're going after off-market properties, direct to seller, where I don't have to, wait for a broker to send me something. And those broker relationships, I never had enough time to establish, right? We're still establishing those as we go, being younger. And then I can utilize other people's monies and creative partnerships and stuff like that to actually go and purchase these and not have to have a ton of capital, up front, which is what kind of a lot of people have that limiting belief around not being able to buy anything because they don't actually have the money themselves. So.
Gotcha. And where are you from? I don't know if you mentioned it throughout that story. And I guess where did the real estate career start as well? I know you just moved, but give us some context as to where all this is going on.
Yeah, so I essentially just had a long path to end up in the same spot. So I grew up in Orlando, graduated and went to Indianapolis, so the Midwest, for the engineering job. And it's so funny. I look back at kind of my decision of why I even did that. Dude, the only reason I even accepted that job is because they were paying like slightly more than the jobs in Florida. And I'm just like, hey, I'm in my 20s. Like, I want to go, whatever's paying me the most money, I'm going to go do. But the beautiful thing that came out of it was when I did decide to leave engineering and go into real estate, I am now sitting in the Midwest, which is, as far as like barrier of entry of like finding deals and buying deals, a lot lower price per units than you'd see in Florida or Texas or California, stuff like that. And so I actually got very fortunate to like where I ended up starting. And, once we did that, then I moved to Michigan for a short 2 years before now I'm back in Orlando. I just moved earlier this year. And at this point, it's kind of cool because my fiance is in the medical field, becoming a doctor. So her schedule is like set. Like it's just, she has to go here. She has to work here. She has to go here. She would work here. But what's happened since moving into real estate, I've actually had a lot more freedom over location, which is kind of cool. So I've been able to run our Indianapolis and Michigan apartments and find more deals in those markets from Florida or from, a different outside of necessarily living in those specific local areas.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to take down some deals in the Midwest than in a coastal city. One, because it's cheaper, but two, you just have way less competition, right? The level of sophistication is just lower. So that certainly does make it a little bit easier for sure. Now, did you have a deal under your belt like before you went full time, or did you just literally get it? Like you just dove right in? I mean, talk about like that early part of the process there.
Yeah, I did do a house hack. I think like everybody's first kind of, foot into the real estate realm is through a house hack. I essentially was working my W-2 and I got, a great experience. Was working my W-2, found a 2-unit, or really a single family home with a basement that I converted the basement into another unit as well. And I kind of checked my pride at the door, and I lived in the basement. But, before living there, I had to build a kitchen, renovate a bathroom, build out the bedrooms and stuff like that. And so I have this W-2 engineering job that I'm working, felt like 10, 12 hours a day. I get home, I pick up my tools, and I start building out this unit because I had already leased out the upper half. Like I bought it and I had a renter as soon as I bought it. And that was just, try to keep the cash flow going. So I really learned a lot. And one of the main things I learned, you probably realized this, Axel, was like, I'm going to use contractors from here on out. Like I'm never picking up the hammer and doing stuff myself anymore, because it's not the best use of my time. Better use of my time is going out, maybe sourcing deals or putting together partnerships, rather than actually, getting down in the nitty gritty of, getting my hands dirty. So that was like really cool. And that was my first experience with real estate. But that was all I had at the time of leaving engineering to go into real estate full time. So I mean, it was enough of a nest egg to like get started, but by no means had I replaced my active income with passive income.
Gotcha. So when you did go full time, let's talk about what happens after that. I mean, was it straight to multifamily? Let's try and find some deals, some off market deals. We'll try and build the passive income, or was there some other strategy that you were pursuing at the time?
Yeah. So what I remember was when I was in engineering, right? Every day I'd wake up and I'd do something, and I'd learn something new about this specific thing that I was doing in engineering. And I'm like thinking to myself, I go, in 10, 15 years, I'm like, what did I actually even learn? Like I haven't really done anything. I'm just like, recreating the wheel, it almost seems like, and just fighting fires. But the cool thing is, when I transitioned, I thought to myself, well, maybe I need to do something for money, right? I need to find source of income, but let's do it in the real estate realm, so that every day I'm at least learning something about real estate investing. And so my two options were get licensed and be like a realtor and maybe just work with investors. Or option two was go to a real estate investment firm in town and be, I had an engineering background. I was thinking, hey, maybe I can be like an analyst there, right? I can help them underwriting and stuff like that. And I ended up choosing the route of getting licensed and then working with just investors, right? Just trying to get as much experience with investors, because then, I'd see them buy deals and I'd ask them about their numbers and stuff. And that was at least the education that I needed for the first year of just like, all right, I can still make some money on the side, but I can also start learning more about real estate investing before I, actually start go buy apartment buildings,
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, that's a good route, because as you mentioned, it allows you to stay in the game, right? Well, you can maybe pick up a check here and there, and also network with a lot of the larger investors or the more successful investors, people with some experience, et cetera. It's like you're getting paid to network in a way, right? But you do have to have a pretty lean lifestyle in order to kind of do that, right? So there's the downside, but if you're in your mid-20s, early 20s, that's fine. I think that's something that's a trade that's worthwhile to make if you have a long-term vision in terms of being in the business. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I do want to get to direct to seller at some point, but I want you to maybe share a deal that you did that was sourced kind of direct to seller, that was like a good application of a lot of the things that you were working on, and a good example of maybe the systems that you're using now to find deals. So I know you've done a handful over the last couple of years. Why don't you pick one and maybe talk about how you found it? Bonus points if there was a partner in it, because I'd love to talk about deal structure as well. And I know you've partnered with some other folks on deals. But why don't you talk about a deal that you did, and we'll get into the specifics around it, and then that'll probably lead to some follow-up questions about how you're actually building the system to find those deals now.
Yeah, so the very first apartment building that we did was a 10-unit apartment building, and I say we because there were partners on that deal, and we sourced it through sending a cold text message to the owner. And if we kind of go back and just like look at how that even worked in the first place, it was just timing, right? We just happened to time this guy where he was a business owner in town, right? He owned a flooring company, and then he had 17 single family homes, and then he had this one 10-unit apartment building. And for some reason, that 10-unit apartment building for him was just too much, right? Not the 17 homes. I guess he was fine and comfortable with those. It was just this apartment building was giving him trouble. So we reached out to him, cold text message, just a simple, right? You've seen it in your business. Like the shorter you can get that text message, but with still kind of getting across the point, is better. And then we love to put the little dash Axel R, or like dash Justin W at the end, just so it gives a little personal touch. So it doesn't seem like, hey, you're just blasting a bunch of people with text messages. So we did that, right? And then we started establishing the relationship because he indicated, hey, he's interested in selling. And this is our first deal. So he throws out, $35,000 a unit for
and when was this? Sorry, just from a year standpoint, timing standpoint.
This was summer 2021.
Okay, perfect.
Summer 2021. And so he throws out a number that he's interested, 1995 build, and he throws out 350,000. And we're like, I'm new to this, and I go, I don't know if that's a good deal or not. Your eyes light up, right? 35.
Seems good. But I live in Boston, so all those numbers seem good. But
what are you talking about? And so rents were, I think they were 465 average when we purchased it. And it took us a little bit of coaching, right? At that point, I had joined multiple mastermind networks. So I had people behind me for encouragement and coaching, which is necessary, I think, getting around the right people. So I look at it, 465 average rents, 350,000. We're like, all right, we're going to do it. And I unload the clip, right? I have all this money I had saved up from engineering. I'm like, I'm putting all my money into it. And then I got two other partners that put a third, right? And we bought it. And then now rents are like 850 average or something like that, which is unbelievable. And we didn't have to do full gut jobs. We literally just did light turns, maybe some flooring and paint on some of them. So I look back at that deal, I go, man, I hit a home run right off the bat. And I had no idea when I looked at that was a home run that I was hitting because the experience wasn't there. So I got super fortunate. But, hey, all my money kind of went to that deal. And that's when I started shifting on all the deals we've done since then. I have much, much smaller capital contributions, but I still have significant equity stakes in those because we've started using other people's money.
Gotcha. No, I mean, that's for a mid-90s build at 35 a unit. I mean, that seems, granted, I only know Indianapolis vaguely well, but that seems like a pretty killer deal, especially if you're going, high 400s and average rents to in the 800s. I mean, you're almost doubling rents. Like that's going to be a no-brainer. So what ended up happening with that one? Do you just still have it under the same debt that you bought it? You refi it, sell it, or?
Yeah. So we fortunately and kind of unfortunately, we have it on a 3.5% interest rate. So my two other partners are like, well, no way we're going to refinance this. Rates at where they're at now. And I'm sitting there like, man, I'd love to take this capital out and go put it into another deal. So it's kind of, I mean, that's probably, I'd say, one of the downsides of a partnership is, if there's three of you, you need two-thirds votes or something like that. But we've pretty much come to the terms of like, hey, when rates drop, if they do the next, over the next year or two, whatever it may be, we'll take advantage of that, right? We've stabilized the asset. Didn't take long to stabilize. Most people actually, we just put them on like an 18-month, 6-month increment rent raise, and most of them ended up staying. And those that moved out, we did the light renovations on those and got in a new tenant. So stabilized, we're just we'll refinance 100% of our capital out, probably more, honestly, from the value increase that we've done as soon as rates dip, or if we come across another great opportunity in that market where I can actually bring those same partners into that deal, right? I just be like, hey, let's refinance and then let's just roll this money into this next one.
Yeah. Or if you guys have a good relationship, you do like a 1031 into something, and if you can buy with rates on a good price on the other deal type of thing. But no, I mean, that's a great outcome. So from a partnership structure standpoint, was it just as simple as you literally just mentioned, where everybody writes a third and they get a third of the equity? I
wish I totally I didn't really realize this when we were going into it. So one of my partners is from New Zealand. He's a New Zealand citizen. So as a result, we're like 90% of the way through this, purchasing this asset, and the bank comes back to us and goes, wait, this guy's not American? We're like, yeah, we told you that up front. Like, what are you talking about? And so last minute, they're like, okay, the only way this is going to work is we need a little bit more down payment. So instead of doing 20, 25 down, we ended up having to do 30 down. Totally fine, right? It was not that big of a deal. And the other thing that we ended up doing, not knowing of the 1031 benefit later on, is we did a TIC partnership, tenant in common partnership, because this happens for Canadian citizens as well, I found out, and then also New Zealand citizens, is if they are a member on the LLC that owns the property, for us, as Americans, we don't have to deal with this, but they actually get taxed twice. So they get taxed, they have the property tax, and then when they're now in their state they get or country they get taxed another time. However, the way to be around that is they have to be an active business, like active owner of the deal, and that comes from being, on the deed or whatever. So a tick kind of makes that work for them. So we did a tenant in common, not knowing that, hey, technically we can actually just go individually 1031 our ownership percents when the deal sells and not actually have to go 1031 together into the next deal. But that was like a little unique one. And I'm glad you asked that because I had totally forgot. And sometimes I forget that that's how we have it set up because all it was just extra paperwork. You don't really realize the difference when you're running the asset.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the tick structure makes sense because I think there's more countries as well on top of Canada and New Zealand where that is a dynamic that is important to analyze. Is like, what's the tax treatment in the U.S. and then how does that work when the money goes back over to their home country? The bank being PO'd about it is kind of interesting. So the way they were just nervous that somebody was out of the country and they just wanted more money down to that was all it was. Was there like additional paperwork they needed? Was there anything like that or?
Yeah, they just needed to see. So he essentially just needed to form an LLC or a corporation in Indiana, and that kind of like made them happy. But really what they just pretty much underwrote myself and the other partner as like, if things go south, we can at least come after them and get our money.
Yeah.
Like if this guy skips, he's a New Zealand guy is just gone, and we default on the loan, they're like, the chances that they get that are less than coming after, two US citizens. Right. So
yeah,
I think that kind of made them, and then the 30% down, like smooth things over.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's interesting though, just to, banks, it's funny, watching banks deal with turbulence towards the end of a closing, like how banks react or, depending on the bank, the size of it, whether it's a credit union, a large national bank, a mid-sized regional bank. There's just always a different solution to these various different problems. But hey, I mean, you got to close, right? It's a good outcome. So what happened after that? You mentioned that was the first one. I know you've done a couple since then. I'd love to talk about another one. Maybe if you have a story of finding, a different deal off market through a different strategy, maybe cold texting is really what you've dialed in on, but, let's give the listeners an example of maybe another deal, whether it's indie, similar size, smaller size, if you have another one you want to chat about.
Yeah. Let's dive into that. So what happened was I kind of mentioned it, right? I unloaded the bag in this deal. Right. And so now I'm looking at myself, I go, well, I don't have a ton of capital. What do? Do I just wait around, go broker some deals so I have capital? No, that's not how we do this. We're proactive people, right? And so what happened was I realized that by sourcing deals, that is a massive value you contribute to potential partnerships, a massive value. If you have a bunch of capital or you have capital raising skills, that's also a huge value you can contribute, right? So I realized, hey, I don't have the capital or the capital raising skills at this point. Let me go out and just find as many good deals as I can. And that's going to be my shoe into these deals is I have control over them because I found them, and then I get to bring in the partners that I want. So then that's exactly what I did. So then we just started focusing all direct to seller, right? And we built out a system where kind of like a glorified CRM where we're tracking our calls, our text messages, and we don't do any mailers. But we essentially call them first, leave a voicemail if they don't answer, hit them with the text message, and then just always following up, right? The consistency, right? You've seen that in your business, right? The more consistent you are, that's going to set you apart from everybody else, especially when there's a high competitive marketplace that you are trying to go direct to seller in. So that's what we did. Mm-hmm. So then you fast forward 2022. I mean, at one point we had 4 deals under contract to buy. I wholesaled the 4th one because I don't know about you. Like I just mentally was losing my mind trying to keep track of like every little detail we needed to do to close. And right, I sourced them. So I'm also kind of involved with the lending side, like bringing in the lenders, bringing in the partners. It was just too much. So we wholesaled one. So that was a 6 unit that we converted to Airbnbs in Indiana. And then we did 2 other 8 units at that point. And then we actually wholesaled an 8 unit as well. And so those were cool. Those were, we JV partnership those. One that might stick out as far as like structuring the deal. The one that we have 8 unit in downtown Indianapolis, it was me and somebody else actually from our real estate network that found it. And together we own 40% of that deal. And we put zero of our own capital into it. And the only way that works is if you find it at a massive discount that you can afford to carve off some. But that deal showed me that if you have good relationships and you find a good deal, a really good deal, you can, one, put an acquisition fee on it, right? 3 to 5% or 2%, whatever you feel comfortable. You can put an acquisition fee, and then you can also carve out portions of the equity for you as the deal finder and the asset manager, and putting together all the pieces. And as long as the returns are going to look good for the capital partners, you don't necessarily have to just give them a ton of, like, a huge return for their contributions. Like, you can take more of the deal if you have it at a good enough discount. And that's why we've really loved off market, is because it actually does give you those kind of like home run deals. You seem to find a lot more direct to seller than you would, right? If a broker was listing it, that would most likely, you're not going to see like a huge discount on an asset that's listed on the market.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's especially nowadays, it just doesn't exist, right?
Or no discount.
There's no discount. It's the opposite. There's a premium. It's not even market anymore. It's above market. So, I mean, well, that's really interesting. So I want to dive into that structure just a little bit more. So, you guys have 40% of the equity. You didn't bring any money. Obviously, some folks brought the money. How are those folks being compensated? Is you have some kind of preferred return, or is it just money going out, goes 40% to us, X% to you? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's just simply, there's no preferred return. We essentially structured it like a syndication with no pref. And then, the 60% of the equity goes to whoever brought how much money, right? And we just send it out every month. We'll send out distributions. We'll send it out an update on what's happening. And then every quarter we'll meet as like a partnership. Now, in our partnership agreement and everything, it's like they are still partners, right? So a lot of them, all of them have real estate experience in doing deals. They're not just like some Joe Schmo off the side of the road. And we all have prior relationships as well. And so we'll carve out different like roles and responsibilities for everyone, whether that's bookkeeping or finances or taxes or, getting the signage or getting us put on Google My Business, you name it, right? There's all kinds of stuff that you can carve out. But at the end of the day, if they all just like took an international trip, like, you were in Japan, I think I saw recently or not too long ago.
That's a good memory of you. Yeah, that was a few months back.
If they all just dipped out to Japan, all of our capital partners just dipped out to Japan for 2 months, it's like the deal will still work and run without them there, but we still like to have them contribute as much as possible. So we found a good synergy with, once you do get everything stabilized, we like the monthly light kind of, hey, this is what's happening. Here's, our monthly, metrics. And then here's, distributions coming this amount. This is why, right? Maybe if we paid property taxes, that distribution amount is minimal. But then we also like to do it quarterly, like we bring everyone together. And then at the end of the day, right, any major decision making, like selling, refinancing, anything like that, or anything above a certain X dollar amount threshold, everybody's involved with, right? So it's been a pretty cool structure. I liked it so far.
Yeah, no, that works. And I assume if you were to do like a refinance or sell, like does money go back to the capital partners at that point first, and then whatever is the excess is split, or is it truly split at that point?
It is just truly split. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That comes from having.
That only works if you buy a really juicy one. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes from, but like if you look back at our Airbnb deal, I didn't give myself any preferred equity for finding the deal, putting together the lender and all that stuff. And so if I put, the same amount of capital I invested, somebody else invested the same amount and has, 1% of the rules and responsibilities, but they're getting the same return. And that was kind of like a awakening for me of like, hey, compensate yourself for your effort and the value you contribute to that partnership.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So let's talk about, for the folks out there that are like, that all sounds good. I want to go out there. I want to do some marketing. I want to get in front of folks. We talk a lot on this show about going direct to seller. It's obviously something that we do. And, we teach it in a course we got. We're talking about a bunch of people on podcasts about it. But everybody's got a bit of a different approach, right? In my world, we're very heavy on the cold email, cold call, like broadly market to industry professionals and try and pick up referral deals, right? Like that's kind of what we focus on. And then we sprinkle in a little mail, sprinkle in a little, cold calling. Other people just go all in on direct mail and they just do tons and tons of direct mail. So, if you were to define maybe the cornerstone of your strategy, I guess, what would that be? And then let's talk about the rest of what you do around that as well.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, if as long as whatever you're choosing for your marketing, you are consistent and always looking to gain an edge, right? So we mentioned it offline how you're, certain stuff you're targeting that most people wouldn't, right? And that's giving you an edge in as far as like, oh, these people most likely have slightly more motivation to sell than your average investor, your average owner. Right. So that's as long as you're doing that. But like the cornerstone of what we've done, what we've had success, right, is calling and texting. And then we've just implemented kind of more email marketing as well into that, that plan, that strategy. And so the key, though, is that, like you mentioned, some people just lean into direct mail. Direct mail can be somewhat automated and less of your personal time to do. Cold calling and cold texting is a very hands-on process, right?
Yeah.
And so what we've done is we've brought in a full-time, I call him my acquisition specialist to give him kind of a fancy title when he's talking to people. But really, at the end of the day, boil it down, he's a VA that sounds very American, which is important, and can do the calling and, has technology background that he can do calling and texting, and he will do the prospecting. Right. And then if there anyone in that prospect, we cast a wide net. We have like 5,000 apartment buildings in our system right now that we're actively marketing to nonstop. And if any one of those owners just simply says, sure, I'd be interested in seeing an offer, that's when it's my responsibility or the other lead managers, right? We're in multiple markets. We're in 3 different markets. So we have lead managers for each market. They're following up within 24 hours, very important, within 24 hours to say, hi, I am local to this area. This is what I've done in the area. Let's meet in person. Let's, give me a little bit more about the unit mix and the renovation levels and, what's the laundry situation, stuff like that. So that's like our responsibility is to take kind of that wide prospecting that's done where you pay someone not as much money, right? That's a better use of their time than my time. And then you do need to come in for being the closer, right? And establish deep relationships to kind of get it across the finish line.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. I mean, that's it's a little different in our business now in that we have I have a US based acquisitions manager that keeps control of the deal a little bit longer in terms of takes the inbound calls, underwrites and makes offers. Granted that we discuss what the offer price is going to be, but he's actually the one to handle that. But before, we had the exact same structure in our business. Instead of working with VAs, I had interns at the college I went to. A few years out of school, there was some internship programs, monthly stipend, and just send cold emails, send some cold texts, and when somebody raises their hand and asks for an offer, that's when the baton gets passed over, and that's when the deal gets picked up. And that's a good strategy, whether it's a VA or an intern or your little brother, it doesn't matter, right? That's a really easily outsourced part of the process. So that's great. Now, when you're reaching out and doing cold text, when you're reaching out and doing cold emailing, etc., is this stuff automated? Are you doing one-to-one? We're sending out one email, we're sending out one text. Maybe it's different depending on the actual strategy itself. How do you go about doing that? And do you have any like little, tools or software, or anything behind the scenes helping you manage that whole process?
Yeah, at first we've played around with kind of like bulk text messaging, right? Where, the text message says hi and then like insert variable owner name and then, try to insert property center, city and stuff like that. What we realized pretty early on is the more like automated stuff we did was working for smaller multifamily assets. But as we started getting higher up in the sophistication level, which usually correlates with higher unit counts as well, we realized, one, that there's less of them, right? So we have less opportunity. Like we can't blow our shot, right? We have fewer shots to blow. And then also right? There's a little bit more sophistication where it seems like they would, if our data wasn't perfect, that it came through, whether that was like a voicemail drop or a bulk text message, where it just came across a little clunky sometimes, and their sophistication level was like, shut it down. We're definitely not interested. This guy's, he's not even trying, right? And then so we were missing a lot of opportunities doing it that way. So I decided, all right, it's going to be more costly to do more like one-on-one approaches, but what we'll do is we'll have the new leads come in the system, right, into the funnel, and then our guy is calling them and calling them. If they don't answer that phone number, right, there's could be 2 to 3 phone numbers per owner. They're not answering, then he's going to leave a voicemail that's somewhat scripted, right? There's a script for the call and the voicemail, and then he's going to send them a scripted text message. Now, that's very time consuming, but what he gets to do is he gets to make sure he doesn't mess up on the voicemail, and he gets to make sure that text message doesn't say hi entity name or, have the wrong name.
123 Main Street LLC.
Yeah, exactly. And then, or maybe it has like, oh, wait, we actually had the address is kind of messed up here, right? And so that way we're putting our best foot forward with these leads as much as possible. It does cost a little bit more, but we've found a lot of success. And what we've paired that with is our direct to seller like system, software and stuff like that. And so we originally were using, for those who are familiar in the DTS world, we were using Podio as our CRM, and we were integrated with a software called Smartphone that was our calling and texting platform. And the reason I even started with this in the first place is, one, you could add unlimited users to your Podio account, which was nice as we scaled our business, right? We have 10, 12 people in our business now. So, and I didn't have to buy 10, 12 Podio accounts. I just had one, right? So it kept costs down so I could spend more money on the VA than actually marketing costs. And then the other thing is that when you click on 123 Main Street, Cashflow USA, right, it pulls up all the times we've communicated with this person via call and text in one spot, right? And that was a lot of the bulk text messaging and kind of Mojo dialer type stuff. They had their own way of tracking it in different areas, and it was never really integrated well. And so that was what our original system was built. We've been doing that for the last 2 years, and then we just rolled out actually the next evolution, and we took the same concepts and we moved it over to a CRM called Zoho, which is like, I'd say probably top 1, 2, or 3 in globally CRMs. What's cool about that is it means there's 18,000 apps and integrations with that CRM. So you can do much more than just direct to seller. You can run all your investor relations, your newsletter, your website, back end stuff. Everything, DocuSign, everything you would ever possibly want in the real estate world in your business can be ran through that same one. But then on direct to seller side, it's like, all right, we just integrated it with a different calling and texting platform where we click on 123 Main Street, just like we did in Podio, and it pulls up all the communications that we've had with that person. But now we have more functionality to integrate direct mail or email marketing just straight into that existing lead. And then, once we get under contract, then we can actually just one click of a button, blast it out to our partnership list of, hey, we're ready. We need money. We need capital for this deal. Who's in? So it's kind of a cool way of doing the whole real estate business all in one platform.
No, that's great. The more of that stuff you can have under one umbrella, the better, right? The goal is to have the functionality to have, your CRM, if you can call or text through it, if you can email through it, if you can order direct mail or, do whatever through it from a marketing standpoint, that just makes everything so much easier, right? The more you minimize the amount of tools you're using and that you have to train people on and that you have to train yourself on, just the better, right? But I think I really want to highlight too the fact that you pivoted and adjusted your approach when reaching out to owners, going from a more scalable automated strategy to a little bit more one-to-one and kind of recipient specific strategy, because you really only do get one shot at a first impression with the owners of sizable properties, right? And I think there's a lot of similarities between marketing to multifamily owners as there are to marketing to single family owners, but that is not one of them, in that you can market to, Aunt Sally that inherited the house, and sure, maybe you get her name wrong on the letter, or, the text message goes to the wrong address, whatever it is. But if she's motivated enough to sell, she's probably going to look past all that stuff. On the multifamily side, they're not, because they're constantly screening for your ability to close, your ability to be easy to work with, just the capacity you have as a buyer, right? All of these different things. It's much more of a dance. And especially they want to work with people they like. That's also a big component of it. It's really important to get that stuff right. Yeah.
The relationships, there's like, people realize that, or don't realize that it's almost like, it doesn't matter how good your systems and stuff. It's like you mentioned, it's like they have to like you. You have to have a relationship with them for it to turn into anything. And that relationship gives them confidence as you have a buyer, right? Or, who's your lenders? And if you can say the same lenders that they've used, they're like, oh, of course. Yeah. John from, First Community Bank. Yeah, we love that guy. Yeah. So it's like, we realize that we're just like, is anything you can do to establish a deeper relationship with them. And if your marketing efforts direct to seller are focused on being consistent and then establishing a relationship, I think, your business, our business, like we're succeeding because of that. Right. And as it gets more competitive, which it will, we will continue to succeed because we're building deep relationships rather than just kind of casting a wide net at our potential leads.
100%. No, it's absolutely right. Let's round this conversation up by maybe giving like a nice little kind of 3-step introductory process to getting involved in the direct to seller side. I'll paint a picture of maybe one of the listeners here they got 10, 15 units. They bought them all through agents. They want to go and scale their business a little bit more predictably. Maybe they're looking at, they want to go buy 8 to 50 unit properties. I don't know, something in that range. They've never done this. They just listen to this podcast. They're all excited. What do they do next? What do they do tomorrow in order to actually get in front of some sellers, start doing a little bit of marketing? What would you suggest?
Yes, they need to take out a pen and paper or pencil and paper and write this down. Maybe the notes app, but like the 3 components of your direct to seller business. And right, you can be brand new and you can scale to 7-figure business, in the next couple of months. One is, think of it like a car, right? I love this analogy. It's a car. Right? And driving a car. The first thing you need is fuel for your vehicle, right? And that is going to be in the source of lists of potential properties that you're targeting. Now, Axel and I could probably do another 3 hours on this just simple subject, and we're not going to, but really there's so many different softwares and stuff like that. If you guys reach out to me after listening to this, I've done a masterclass just about some places that we've gone to source lists of properties. But at the end of the day, hear me out, and Axel, maybe you've seen this too. The list of properties, we all technically have access, if we hustle and look hard enough, to the same information, right? So I'm not really setting myself any different than Axel is in the marketplace through my list of properties. What's going to set me apart is the other 2 components, step 2 and step 3, which is you need a system. Whether you're going to build that on your own of, a CRM with calling and texting, or maybe you're doing emailing or direct mail, just keeping track of your lead funnel and deal funnel. You need technology to help you with keeping track of it, and then also with scheduling follow-ups, because that's going to help you be consistent in the marketplace. And that's your advantage, consistency. And then the last one is you need, like, if you're not like extroverted or comfortable with like kind of the salesy side of building relationships, get somebody on your team. And it's most likely somebody local to the market that you're targeting too, because you want to have a local connection to that area where you can meet people in person. But step 3 is essentially, what is your relationship skills? And that's you as the driver of your vehicle, right? So you have the fuel for your car, which is the list. You have your car, which is your system that you build, or, reach out to me. We build systems for other people. And then lastly, it's like who you are and your team is within that system and how well you are at driving your car and building those relationships that are needed to take hey, I want to see an offer, to we're closing on this next week and we have the partners already lined up in the capital and all that jazz.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think people forget, without a good data list, the rest of it is shit. Like you can't even get off the ground. Right. So that's like step number 1 is a great data list. And then, I think it's interesting. There's a lot of folks in real estate that aren't extroverted, that aren't, they don't want to cold call. They don't want to be on the phone all day, right? I think there's oftentimes a lot of folks in real estate that are great on the financial side, right? Or great on the operational side. And those are skill sets that are valuable to have in real estate, but they are challenging to have in the direct to seller world. Just a tip for everyone. When I got started, I mean, still, right? It's funny. It's ironic I do a podcast because I'm a pretty introverted guy. Like I tend to I would rather not be on the phone than be on the phone. Let's put it that way. So for me, the way around it early was getting on the phone only when I really needed to. So I did a lot over email, a lot over text. I would get on the phone to build some level of rapport, but like you can still move the needle with a lot of, a higher volume of communication over some kind of written format, whether it's text or email. Yeah, you're going to have to get on the phone here and there, and it's better to get on the phone objectively. But like it's not like you can't do it. It's just, it'll make it a lot easier if you have folks around you that are inclined to want to get on the phone with a seller, want to get in front of a seller, go walk a property, be a little bit more social. So there's a solution to that problem if you're in that boat, right? You can get around it. It's not the end of the world if you're not. So I think those are some solid tips. And
that is ironic with the podcast that you're like, I'll talk in this microphone all day long, but hey, I don't necessarily like. I'm the same way. It's like I'd rather not pick up the phone and call sellers. So we brought in lead managers, right, for each of the markets that we're in. But I'll talk your ear off at a conference or on the podcast and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm not social. It's just like, what's the best use of your time? And as you start to scale your business like you have, right, you've literally, you were in it, and now you're trying to take more of a bird's eye approach to your business, which is, what we should all be striving for.
It's interesting in that a lot of the best salespeople I know, whether it's real estate or otherwise, a lot of my friends from college, right? They're in software sales, tech sales, pharmaceutical sales, whatever. A lot of the best salespeople I know are like very introverted. And I think that maybe there's something about being able to navigate a conversation in a very efficient way that maybe that's a trait. I don't know. This is me hypothesizing in a totally different podcast and a different conversation, but it's certainly an interesting one. So it's not the end of the world. There's ways around that for sure, but it does help. If you like to get on the phone and you like to chat with people, like you have a predisposition to making a lot of money, whether it's in real estate or in any industry. So, good for you. But again, a whole nother topic. Yeah. So, we're coming up on our time here. I want to make sure I get you out of here before we wrap up. But feel free to plug anything you got. I know you obviously have a program. You kind of alluded to that a few moments ago. So feel free to talk about that and then share any other places where people can connect with you, reach out to you, et cetera.
Yeah. So I mentioned the car, right, and the analogy of you need a good system. What we realized with a lot of people in our network is that maybe not everybody has the tech savviness, to go out and build a system for themselves, but they still want these off-market deals coming in. And so what we've done is we essentially just package the same software and we set everything up for new clients. And we've done that for a handful, I think almost up to 20 clients now, which is unbelievable because we just started doing this a few months ago. But we essentially go launch your direct-to-seller business for you. And if you guys want more info, just nostressdts.com. The name kind of gives it away. We're trying to alleviate that stress for you. So maybe you are just wanting to talk to more sellers, but you don't want to spend it took us 2 years to kind of perfect our system. You don't want to spend that time just building it, right? We'll do it for you for a nominal fee relative to the opportunity cost that it provides. And then you can now, all right, let's just start talking to more people and finding more deals. So we do that, nostressdts.com. And then, I'm a younger guy, just like you, Axel. And, I've set a goal of, by 30 years old, I want to have 300 apartment building units. So that journey I've kind of been logging through social media, like a lot of us. So check me out, Cashflow Cowboy. I can't believe we didn't even talk about that. Cashflow Cowboy on Instagram. Started off as a joke, is now kind of the lifestyle that I'm messing around with. But yeah, that's the goal, is kind of, encourage, I came from engineering. Let's encourage more people that might not have found out about real estate through their education into this wonderful world of real estate investing that we have found.
Love it. Sounds good, man. All that stuff will be in the show notes. Go follow Justin on Instagram. Yeah, we did not get to the Cashflow Cowboy stuff. That is funny. It's an interesting joke because it's like you live in Orlando, you're in Indy. It's like what It almost it's out of left field, but in any event, yeah, we'll have links to that in the show notes. Justin, it was great to catch up, man. Thanks for coming on, and let's obviously stay in touch.
You're the man, Axel. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. If you learned something new during the show, please consider sharing this episode with a friend, family member, or business partner, or just leaving a rating and review, as it helps the show get noticed by more folks. Catch you next week.